to this the committee here today very quickly, and I'll try to be brief, which I usually don't do. But I just trying to think. I grew up in Fort Kent, Maine, and we really took pride in the labor we did. And we used to go downstate to Portland. They make fun, those hicks from Fort Kent, the potato pickers and the loggers and the truckers. And so yeah, we're hicks, but we're smart hicks and we're good workers. So you should try the same thing. But I know everyone here has probably put a lot of hard work in their time, but I think there's a lot of people in this country who moved away from that, and I think if everyone did have an experience growing up working hard, they'd have a different respect for the workers in this country. So that's something I just wanted to share with you. Also, I've seen a lot my last few years. I moved out of Maine for a little bit, and I was in Utah. I actually was a teacher for part of the day, but I didn't make too much money, though, so to supplement my income, I did other work in the evenings and the weekends. I know the labor movement brought us the weekends, but sometimes I was still working on the weekends. But when I was out there, I worked with a lot of Mexican immigrants in some factories, and I just was appalled by the treatment of some of these people, and they just didn't know their rights, and they were taken advantage of, some mostly because they didn't have documents. And I didn't really have a good sense of labor history going through high school and college, even though I studied a lot of sociology and political science. But I got my history, working with these people. I got my history when I came and worked in the legislature and worked with Democrats and Republicans on business and labor issues. And then I started doing some of my own reading, and I learned a lot about the history of labor in this country. And after I heard about this bill, I thought about it, and it just sort of seemed pretty tough to look back and see what people had gone through, and whole factories burning down and women jumping out of buildings, and what people went through to give us the rights we have today. And then to see, even in Maine and Portland, and talk to people around the country, to see the immigrants coming in this country and the problems that they have. And if you see what happened in New Bedford, Massachusetts, I think it was somewhere out of Boston anyway, in Massachusetts, the way these people were rounded up and separated from their children and treated almost like animals, you have to wonder, what's going on and why are we moving backwards? So at the least, I think we need to do something like this. And I think for the amount that needs to be allocated for it, I think it's a drop in the bucket, not to demean anyone here. I know there's a lot of tough decisions to be made, but I think when you look at the education that would come out of this and how it could affect workers, I think it's critically important. And that investment can go a long way. So, and if we have a better educated populace, better educated workers out there, that'll be a lot more people spending money in our economy. And I think I'll leave you with something I learned about with the Ford Motor Company when Mr. Ford there decided, you know what, if I take care of my workers, if I pay them a good salary, I know they're going to buy my product, and they did. So I think I'll leave it with that, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, sir. Are there any questions?
Not a question, a clarifying point. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Just a clarifying point. Anyone in Portland who said that about immigrants, I don't believe it. The other thing is
not about immigrants, no.
About the separation of immigrants. We have more languages spoken at Portland High School than there are anywhere in the state of Maine. But that's not the issue I'm concerned about.
Yeah.
When you indicated that people in Portland don't work very hard. Go down and work with the fishermen. Find out how hard they work.
No, I know they work hard there.
Most dangerous job in the United States.
I know people work hard. I just was joking around.
I'm not. Thank you.
Okay.
Are there any other questions? Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Are there any others that wish to speak in favor of the bill?
Good morning, Senator Bowman, Representative Norton, members of the committee. My name is James Carson. I'm the president of the Teamsters Union in Maine and in New England. And I've been involved in the labor movement for the better part of 35 years. I've been an officer of my local union for the past 25 years and president of it for the last 5. I believe that one of the most compelling reasons for the passage of this bill is the elimination of ignorance. And that's what education is all about, is the elimination of ignorance. And I can tell you from my years, both in school, right through college, and my years on the job, and my experiences with people since I've been on the job, there's an enormous amount of ignorance about what organized labor is really all about. And it cuts across all sectors of society. even amongst the educated people of society, there's very, very little knowledge about what organized labor is really all about. I get calls from workers every day who know absolutely nothing about what organized labor really is all about because they haven't learned anything up to this point in time. They know they have a need in their workplace, they're being messed around with somehow, they think they need to be represented in some fashion, but they have absolutely no idea how organized labor actually works, what it's about, how it functions, what we do, how we do it. And it's true across, I found it to be true across lots of different sections of the population, including in the legislature. And you know, I think the labor movement itself has to take some of the responsibility for the idea of not having educated people, you know, more extensively about what we do and what we stand for and how we do it all. But the schools, you know, compared to the contribution that organized labor has made to the society, the attention that organized labor gets in the school system is minuscule. It's absolutely minuscule. And so any kind of effort that we can make, I believe, any kind of effort that we can make to put labor's story into the schools and to be able to educate people about what organized labor really is all about is an effort well worth undertaking. So with that, if there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Carson. Are there any questions?
Thank you.
Hearing and seeing none, thank you, sir. Anybody else wish to speak in favor of the bill?
Senator, I'm doing double duty today. My name is Richard Rames. I'm from Biddeford. My wife and I farm, so I guess we're Jeffersonians. I have pretensions to Jeffersonianism, I guess. Got a couple of things. Years ago, my wife discovered that up in the attic of the house where she grew up, down in at Hills Beach in Biddeford, there was this old charter for an organization called the Knights of Labor, which was one of the first nationwide organizations of working people. Had quite a frenzied organizing period that sort of culminated in 1886 and peaked in a drive for the 8-hour day. And on the charter, it was really quite rich. It was signed by the Grand Master Workman Terence B. Powderly, and the bracketing the document, there were a couple of pillars, and they sat on a book. And the motto inscribed on the book was "Knowledge is power." And it seems to me that that's what we're talking about here. You know, there is, or there are powers in society. Society does not run by consensus. There are powerful interests that are always at work. Some people win, some people lose. And we have airbrushed a great deal of the history of the United States out of our textbooks. Our children never run up against it. When I was in college, I was a history minor. A few years after I graduated, I went back and looked at my U.S. history textbook. I found parts of 3 pages that dealt with labor and labor issues. I don't think that's uncharacteristic. I'm pleased to hear that, that Representative Harlow dealt with labor issues when he was teaching. I went through the school system in Biddeford. It never got mentioned. And Biddeford's a working class town. I don't think that's unrepresentative either. So, and I guess I would close just, I'm aware it's dangerous to do policy by vignette, but I've done a public access TV show for years. And in doing that, I've sort of run up against young people at different events. And the rather breathtaking ignorance that they display in terms of history, and especially the history of working people, is quite mind-boggling. It's amusing in a way, Anyway, one of the vignettes that I would share with you was, it actually involved Brother Kelman here. A few years ago, on Labor Day, the AFL basically made it possible for working people, they had the day off because it was Labor Day, so they went to the Sea Dogs game. And we did a show around that one time, and Mike Cavanaugh, the host, and Brother Kelman were interrogating a couple of young people about what Labor Day meant. What was the purpose of Labor Day? And they hadn't a clue. And Peter, as I recall, said, Labor Day, what does it mean? Even with prompting, they had no idea. This towering ignorance might be partially remedied if we did something structural about improving the way we teach the history of this country. Initiative and referendum, the Australian ballot, so-called, the secret ballot, the weekend, the 8-hour day, all of this stuff flows out of organized people's activities. It's a history that our young people are denied. And this might make some small step in addressing that. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Thank you, sir. Are there any others who wish to speak in favor of the bill? Hearing and seeing none, are there any that wish to speak against the bill? Seeing and hearing none, are there any that wish to speak neither for nor against the bill? Chancellor.
Senator Bowman, Representative Norton, members of the committee, I'd rather not speak neither for nor against the bill. I'd rather support the bill, as a matter of fact, because I can't remember hearing more eloquent, poignant testimony in favor of a bill in the years that I've been appearing before you and other members of the committee. The only reason, and I do this with incredible reluctance, having worked with many of the people standing behind me and having worked and supported the labor studies program at Orono, is the budget. My purpose, my job in part, is to represent the students in the interest of keeping tuition as affordable as we can. It's to represent the faculty teaching and all the other excellent programs that we have in the system. And I think it would be a shame if, in order to fund a remarkable, excellent program like this, we had to somehow diminish the resources for those other programs. I'd be happy to support this bill if I could be assured that this money wasn't coming out of the existing budget but was an add-on to, so that the professor who's teaching it and the director and the students who take it know that they aren't getting some advantage on the backs of others who aren't. I'd be happy to answer questions. This is a great, great program. It's an untold or not sufficiently told story that should be told, but I just feel compelled to make the case, particularly now on the budget issue, that we don't take sort of the easy way out and don't put the money behind a good program to make it work.
Thank you, sir. I know Co-Chair Norton has a question or a remark.
Good morning, Chancellor.
Good morning, Representative Norton.
We hear you on money, honestly, but I think I also heard some other things which brought up a question in my mind. Can faculty of the university be shared in departments?
Representative Norton, yes, they can. The speakers who mentioned earlier that the program at the University of Maine is more oriented toward information and public policy sharing. I think they've served almost 130,000 people in the last several years. It would be different from the one proposed here, which would be an academic program going beyond the minor to an undergraduate major and eventually do a master's degree.
I understand that, but I'm hearing people in Southern Maine saying they have a lot of interest in this.
Oh, they do.
And it sounds to me like we have very learned people already there. I'm not suggesting they be switched or be full, unless they want that change. But what I was curious about was, I understand the financial accounting that has to take place, but I was just curious as to whether some of those people who already have that expertise and reputation within that institution, if they wanted to teach a course, for example, in this program. Is that possible?
There's no bureaucratic barrier to that whatsoever, Representative Norton. I would have to say the good folks at Orono are spread thin as it is, but no, would be no prohibition against that at all.
Orono, you keep saying Orono, and I keep saying Southern Maine. I thought this was for Southern Maine.
It is, but I thought you were saying, could the people at the Labor Studies Program in Orono teach in this? I'm sorry, I apologize,
I'm saying for the
misunderstood.
people at Southern Maine who have an interest in this and are already members of other departments also teach
Oh,
here.
I really do apologize, I misunderstood, sure,
Okay.
sure,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Representative Finch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I assume from what you're saying that should the university system choose, they could institute this program now. They do have the authority to do that, and the problem seems to be a choice of where to spend your dollars. Am I correct?
Correct,
Right.
Representative Finch.
I guess my follow-up question then is, if this bill is passed, it is putting an academic program in statute. Would we be setting a precedent if we did that? Are there other academic programs that exist in the university system and are maintained because statutes require them to be maintained?
Representative Finch, I may well turn to my colleague in charge of academic programs if he knows, but it is certainly the exception. But there's a research program, for example, and I'd be happy in a work session to bring you back details on that. It would certainly be an exception, but I don't think it's absolutely unprecedented.
Representative Marcus. Excuse me, Representative Marcus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. People can probably anticipate my question. As Chancellor of the University, I know that in other programs, like, for example, a biomedical program at University of Maine, Orono, that our investment, the state level, into the program allows the university to draw down other funds from other sources, both for faculty, for scholarships, and for research. And perhaps there isn't as lucrative a market as you can find, for example, within the biomedical field. But I'm wondering what your perspective is as to whether we might be able to use this as seed money to establish a program at USM that would draw down money from other sources.
Representative Marcus, that would certainly be the intent, I'm sure, and we would be happy to work with Mr. Gorham and his colleagues here and others who've mentioned the possibility of getting extra funds to pursue that. Yes.
Do you see that as a potential?
Representative Marcus, I wouldn't put any odds on it. I mean, some of the same problems that the speakers talk about are the challenges one would also face in seeking recognition and funding for this. Having said that, given the makeup of the majority leadership in Washington now, there may be a greater sympathy to this kind of initiative and perhaps worth pursuing.
Are there any other questions? Thank you, Chancellor.
Thank you.
Sure. Are there any others that wish to speak neither for nor against the bill? Thank you.
Senator Bowman, Representative Norton, distinguished members of the Education and Cultural Affairs Committee. My name is Vanessa Santorelli, and I serve as the legislative liaison for the Maine Department of Labor. And I'll apologize in advance, and please don't take it as disrespect for my brevity on this matter. I actually have to be across the hall in the Labor Committee right now. But I'm here to testify neither for nor against LD 123, an act to establish a labor center within the University of Maine system. And I, too, would echo what the Chancellor just said, and that we wish we could be in full support. And I sincerely agree with and support all of the comments made by those who all expressed strong and enthusiastic support for such a center within the University of Maine system. Quite simply, our neither for nor against testimony comes down to the same thing that the Chancellor referenced in terms of a lack of available resources and that our department had to make some difficult budget choices that are currently being dealt with in the biennial budget. And so for those very reasons, those are our only concerns. But in terms of the concept and the goals of the system, I think that we would be in very strong support, and want to thank those who brought the issue forward. I'd be happy to answer any questions now, and I'll certainly be here at the work session.
Thank you, Ms. Santarelli. Are there any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any others that wish to speak neither for nor against the bill? Hearing and seeing none, this concludes the public hearing on LD 123.
Hi, I'm Representative Rick Burns from District 145. I've introduced a poem, a piece of literature, to the Education and Cultural Affairs Committee today in relation to a bill, LD 123, an act to establish a labor center at the University of Southern Maine. And I'd like to share that poem with you. It's titled Questions from a Worker Who Reads, written by Bertolt Brecht. Who built Thebes of 7 gates? The books are filled with the names of kings. Did the kings haul up the lumps of rock? And Babylon, many times demolished, who raised it up so many times? In what houses of gold glittering Lima did the builders live? Where, the evening that the Great Wall of China was finished, did the masons go? Great Rome is so full of triumphal arches. Who erected them? Over whom did the Caesars triumph? Had Byzantine much praised in song, only places for its inhabitants? Even in fabled Atlantis, the night the ocean engulfed it, the drowning still bawled for their slaves. The young Alexander conquered India. Was he alone? Caesar beat the Gauls. Did he not have even a cook with him? Philip of Spain wept when his armada went down. Was he the only one to weep? Frederick II won the 7 Years' War. Who else won it with him? Every page a victory. Who cooked the feast for the victors? Every 10 years a great man. Who paid the bill? So many reports, so many questions. Questions from a worker who reads. Thank you.